We're going live and we're live. Hello, folks. Oh, excuse me, I fixed my seat. There we go. That's a bit better. Thanks very much for joining me if you're there. Excuse me. Welcome to Sloan Science Fiction Station. It's time for our weekly Dune book club. We've hit chapter 36. And it's a Friday night. We've had a fair amount of rain here actually last night. A lot of flooding. Place was very badly flooded. Excuse me, this morning. So if you're out there, say hello. And hope the weather's treating you a bit better. It's a bit clearer here tonight. We're about to lose British summertime. Goodness, when's that? In a couple of days' time, I think on Sunday. They're telling us there was saying evening doc. Hi Babs, how are you? So yeah, we'll I think next week then we'll be reverting to the regular GMT instead of GMT +1. All these changes in the calendar. It means we lose an hour of daylight here, and longer. The nights, less daylight, not so good, I think. But there's Valley saying hello. I get to join for a few before dinner. We'll be back after. Thanks very much for joining us. Yes, indeed. This is a nice wee short chapter, I suppose. Chapter 36. And before we begin tonight, I've got a letter from Cynthia about last week's chapter. Bear with me a wee second. Let me see if I can find it. What did I do with it? There it is. There we go. And I just thought I'd read it out. Good way to start, just in regards to the chapter, last week's chapter 35. Excuse me. We'll get going in a wee second. My throat's away with it as usual. Let me just get organized. Put that book there. It says, "Hi Doc, sorry I missed your session last week. I checked your Twitter account for announcements last Thursday, but then did not see the announcement for Friday's session until it was too late. This chapter is a favorite of mine too. So here are a few brief comments or musings on chapter 35. And I'll just read this to you. It says, I've been wondering since you discussed chapter 29 some weeks ago, if the neuro-enhanced dancer in the Royal Creche story at the start of the chapter might be a young Margot Fenring. She was brought to the Imperial Court by Count Fenring, so some bond between them already exists. Her skills in dancing and neuro-enhancement would be good material upon which to build Bene Gesserit's skills. I doubt she was Bene Gesserit trained when first presented, or the spying Princess Irulan would have seen the signs. Perhaps the Emperor later gave her to Fenring as a gift for a job well done. Perhaps the Bene Gesserit selected her for training after her rejection by the Emperor and then worked behind the scenes to pair her with Fenring for Bene Gesserit purposes, such as we see in chapter 35, securing difficult bloodlines and planting phrases to control the powerful. The Baron and Fade both admire her muscular physique with a dancing enticement background. She would have more than the usual complement of sisterhood, poise, stroke polish. Also, Fade uses the expression by the Houri of the Imperial Harem when he sees her, an apt phrase for a woman once deemed worthy of this very role. The enticing dancer was a stand-in combatant, maybe representing the Emperor's legitimate wife and heirs. The mature Countess Margot is the deadly combatant in the most important duel Fade will fight on his birthday. Even if the dancer in the chapter 29 epigraph isn't Margot, there are interesting facts linking that story in chapter 29 with the events in chapter 35. In the Royal Creche story, we find out that Count Fenring is, quote, one of the deadliest fighters in the Imperium, which makes him a good judge of the duel between Fade and the Atreides slave Gladiator. Is this fact widely known? The Baron knows Fenring is a killer, but does Fade? Readers hear the Baron's unspoken warning to his nephew, but were not made privy to any briefings that Fade had for this encounter. And we have a side question here. What useful info might Thufir have about the Fenring couple, given their role in the Imperial Court and the fact that they were the former ambassadors on Arrakeen, residents of the house the Atreides moved into? Fenring's diversionary tactics, which are discordant gestures, veiled threats, humming, etc., may have a dual function of modelling the Baron's own observations and his watching sycophants, and of hiding his physical combative capabilities from the Nay Baron. To what end? If Fade misses this key aspect of Count Fenring, is he as good a fighter as he thinks he is? Is he as qualified to be the Nay Baron as he imagines? And also, if Fade doesn't see the physical threat in the Count, he may be less likely to see the Countess as a physical threat, which she most certainly is. Also in the chapter 29 epigraph, Princess Irulan writes of the intrigues in the royal house, of fathers against wives and children, of mothers and children against their father, in an ongoing battle for succession. The princesses saw their father's sexual self-control as a deadly threat. In chapter 35, Fade and the Baron vie for the power of House Harkonnen with deadly proxy combatants, Thufir the Baron's slave master and the Atreides slave. In the subtler demonstrations of self-control, uncle and nephew both lose. There we go. And that's Cynthia saying, for your information, I've out-of-town guests at the moment, unable to attend your sessions live for a couple of weeks, but we'll keep up with the recordings and look forward to joining the conversation again soon. Thanks as always for your time, Cynthia. Thank you very much for your letter, Cynthia. Some really interesting points there, and possibly lining up Lady Margot Fenring to this was it neuro-enhanced dancer that's brought in to entice the Emperor. It's quite an interesting little letter. So there we go, folks. Thought I'd read that out for you before we get started. There's Tilios was saying it's chilly but sunny here in Ohio. And there's Matt S saying hello. And Matt is saying I have been issued fun for the next 48 hours. Very good. And there's Carlos Cresselia saying, what's up, Doc? Hello, folks. Excuse me. Very, very well. I slept through most of it, but a place absolutely flooded today when we woke up. And I was okay, but the wife had to drive to work in it, and it wasn't fun, apparently. But otherwise, it's actually been quite a nice day here, a bit gusty. And there's Carla saying, I wondered what happened to Fade's offspring after the God Emperor took over the Empire. It's an interesting question, isn't it? I'm wondering, does it turn up somewhere? The matter of, Fade's daughter or son, potentially, I suppose. So there we go. Thank you very much to Cynthia for the letter. And that went past me, folks. I thought that's quite interesting. Where are we? Just going back to chapter 29. Let's have a wee quick look. There we go. So this was to do, let's have a wee quick look at that. This is what Cynthia was talking about. This is the epigraph from chapter 29. Family life of the Royal Creche is difficult for many people to understand, but I shall try to give you a capsule view of it. My father had only one real friend, I think. That was Count Casimir Fenring, the genetic eunuch and one of the deadliest fighters in the Imperium. The Count, a dapper and ugly little man, brought a new slave concubine to my father one day, and I was dispatched by my mother to spy on the proceedings. All of us spied on my father as a matter of self-protection. One of the slave concubines permitted my father, under the Bene Gesserit Guild agreement, could not, of course, bear a royal successor, but the intrigues were constant and oppressive in their similarity. We became adept, my mother and sisters and I, at avoiding subtle instruments of death. It may seem a dreadful thing to say, but I'm not at all sure my father was innocent in all these attempts. A royal family is not like other families. Here was a new slave concubine, then, red-haired like my father, willowy and graceful. She had a dancer's muscles, and her training obviously had included neuro-enticement. My father looked at her for a long time as she postured unclothed before him. Finally, he said, "She is too beautiful. We will save her as a gift." You have no idea how much consternation this restraint created in the Royal Creche. Subtlety and self-control were, after all, the most deadly threats to us all. So that really does line up with the description, doesn't it, of Lady Margot Fenring? The term willowy, I believe, is the one that's used to describe her. Let me just see if I can find it. Bear with me a wee quick second, see if it's here. Back up a wee bit, I think. Let's just see. That's the description of. There we go. She was golden haired. This is the description of Lady Margot Fenring. She was golden haired and willowy. Her perfection of figure, clothed in a flowing gown of ecru, simple fitness of form without ornament. Green grey eyes stared back at him. She had that Bene Gesserit serene repose about her that the young man found subtly disturbing. There is something about that description that kind of, yeah, the term willowy is there, isn't it? Willowy and graceful. She had a dancer's muscles. Could well be. I think that's a very good point, very good observation. The slave concubine we're talking about there is possibly Margot Fenring, and that the gift, save her as a gift, then she's a gift to Count Casimir Fenring from the Emperor himself, I suppose. Interesting, yeah. Well, here we are, back on to topic for this week, chapter 36. It's a reasonably short chapter. And our first epigraph is taken from what we're told is a time of reflection, which sounds like a book by Muad'Dib, I think. Even though the quotation comes from Stilgar's preface to Muad'Dib the Man by the Princess Irulan. Muad'Dib tells us in a time of reflection that his first collisions with Arrakeen necessities were the true beginnings of his education. He learned then how to pull the sand for its weather, learned the language of the wind's needles stinging his skin, learned how the nose can buzz with sand itch and how to gather his body's precious moisture around him to guard it and preserve it. As his eyes assumed the blue of the Abad, he learned the Chakobsa way. Stilgar's preface to Muad'Dib the Man by the Princess Irulan. And I suppose that's what we're going to see in this chapter, is the beginning of Paul Muad'Dib's education. Pardon me, and ours as readers amongst the Fremen. The collision of what was it we're told? His first collisions, I like that, with Arrakeen necessities were the true beginnings of his education. So the chapter begins, we're given a bit of a scene. And it starts with Stilgar's troop who are returning to the Sietch with their two strays, as they're described, from the desert. And they've climbed out of the basin with the waning light of the first moon. We're told the robed figures hurried with the smell of home in their nostrils. And we're going to get a whole bunch of smells and sounds within the Sietch here, I suppose, which are going to sort of give us the sense of Fremen life. So the next thing we're told then is something about the Fremen calendar. We're told that dawn's grey line behind them was brightest at the notch in their horizon calendar that marked the middle of autumn, the month of Caprock. So we have a horizon calendar, a piece of technology to mark the Fremen calendar. It's the middle of autumn when we're getting a time frame. Pardon me, in the month of Caprock. Now, Caprock, I suppose it being the name of a month in this. Simply put, I've looked this one up, is a more resistant rock type which overlies a less resistant rock type. You can have a look at it on Wikipedia. So it gives us a sense of their calendar, that they name things after possibly types of rock or sand, maybe even, and that they do have a sense, I suppose, of seasons. So it's the middle of autumn, the month of Caprock, and I suppose our introduction to the Fremen calendar. So we're told that wind-raked dead leaves strewed the cliff base where the Sietch children had been gathering them. The sounds of the troops' passage, except for the occasional blunderings by Paul and his mother, cannot be distinguished from the natural sounds of the night. We're going to get a wee bit of that in a minute or two here. And here we go. So Paul, we're told, wiped sweat-caked dust from his forehead and felt the tug at his arm, heard Chani's voice hissing, "Do as I told you. Bring the fold of your hood down over your forehead. Leave only the eyes exposed. You waste moisture." So he's getting told off. And behind them comes a whispered command that demanded silence. "The desert hears you." And at this point, then we get, I suppose, all of this, the way the troop mimic and the way the Fremen mimic sounds. We're going to get a bit of that. We're going to get a wee bit of communication here as the troop arrive home, and we get some of these desert signals. Where are we? Here we go. So we're told a bird chirped in the rocks high above them, and the troop stopped, and Paul sensed about him an abrupt tension. There's a faint thumping from the rocks, a sound no louder than mice jumping in sand, and then we're told again the bird chirped, and a stir passed through the troop's ranks. Okay, and then again we hear a mouse thumping. Let me see. Oh, that's my bad handwriting failing me once again. Bear with me a wee second. And again, mouse thumping. Hang on, I'll have to find it in the book. Again, the mouse thumping pecked. Yeah, that's the word I've written down badly there. Sorry, folks. Pecked its way across the sand, and once more the bird chirped. And then the troop resumes its climb up. So there's been a message here. And I suppose it's pretty much all just bird chirps and thumps, I suppose, imitating the mice, the kangaroo mouse, and the birds that are in the area. And we get that sense of the Fremen sort of interacting and making only the same sounds that are around them. So the troop resumes its climb up into the crack in the rocks, and we're told that it was a stillness of breath about the Fremen now, and it filled Paul with caution. He noted covert glances towards Chani, the way she seemed to withdraw, pulling in upon herself. And then we're told that there was rock underfoot now. I put a wee note there. That sounded like the name of like a Hobbit porn star. Rock underfoot. Excuse me. Dear oh dear. Excuse me. That's terrible. Carla's saying, like the Eskimo have many different words for different types of snow, Fremen would have many words for sand and rock. Yes, indeed. We have many different words for rain here, I think, as well. So, yeah, there's rock underfoot now, the faint grey swishing of robes around them, and Paul sensed the relaxing of discipline, but still that quiet of the person about Chani and the others. Which will he followed a shadow shape up steps, a turn, round more steps, and into a tunnel. Past two moisture-sealed doors, into a globe-lighted narrow passage with yellow rock walls and ceiling. I've pointed this out before. This is this same kind of thing as the birth canal, if you like, from The Dragon in the Sea. Excuse me. And it's a sort of passageway, if you like, tunnel into a wide open space. Imagery we've seen in Dune, I think possibly 2 or 3 times now. And it's just something we like to point out, but it's the same thing. So I've just made a wee note next to this. This is like this wee thing in The Dragon in the Sea. So we're into the Sietch Tabr, aren't we? All around him, Paul saw the Fremen throw back their hoods, remove their nose plugs, and breathing deeply. And someone sighed. Paul looked for Chani, and that he finds that she had left his side. And he's hemmed in by the press of robed bodies, and someone jostled him and said, "Excuse me, Usul, what a crush." What a crush. It's always this way. Mm. So this is Farok, isn't it? Uh, on his left, the narrow bearded face of the one called Farok turned toward Paul. The stained eye pits and the blue darkness blue darkness of eyes appeared even darker under the yellow globes. Throw off your hood, Usul, Farok said. You're home. And he helped Paul, releasing the hood catch, elbowing a space around them. So this is Farok as a character who's going to be, I suppose, a minor character who's going to turn up later on and be of some importance in Dune Messiah, isn't he? So just made a wee note of that there. It's I suppose it's one of these things on the first read. Sometimes you don't pay attention too much to some of the minor characters. And as I always point out, they're quite interesting. But here we go. This is Farok sort of introducing Paul a wee bit to the Sietch and to how the Fremen are behaving here, I suppose. So what a crush. It's always this way. Throw off your hood, Usul. You're home. And they're welcoming him. And he clears the space around him with his elbows, we're told. So Paul slips out the nose plugs and swings out his mouth baffle aside. And we get all these smells here, which I quite like. The odors of the place assailed him. We're told unwashed bodies, distillate esters of reclaimed waste everywhere. The sour effluvia of humanity all over it. I just got to read this. Unwashed bodies, distillate esters of reclaimed wastes everywhere, the sour effluvia of humanity, with over it all a turbulence of spice and spice-like harmonics. So just lots of ways of saying just it smells of piss and shit. Basically, it smells really bad. The odors of the place assail them. It's like being attacked by this smell. And underlying it all, of course, is the smell of spice. And we're told the spice-like harmonics. Interesting. Oh, what's that popping up? There we go. Right. So yeah, we're going to get a nice wee introduction to the Sietch and Sietch life here. And I suppose smells and sounds, etc. We're going to get a little bit of Sietch life, but of course they're kind of packing up, aren't they, as we get to see them. And a little bit more of what's happened previously is going to come here, and we'll get a wee sense of what's going on as information is catching up. What's going on? Why are they waiting, Farok? What's going on? Why have we slowed down? And Farok responds, well, for the Reverend Mother, I think. You heard the message. Poor Chani. And of course, poor Chani, he asked himself. Paul looked around, wondering where she was, where his mother had gotten to in all this crush. Of course, this message has come in, and it's clearly had an effect on the Fremen. Paul's not been particularly wise to it. He's noted the effect, noted the behavior, that I suppose the change in behavior with Chani. But again, we've got a sort of linguistic indicator here from Farok. Oh, poor Chani, poor Chani. He asked himself, what's going on here? And Farok takes a deep breath, we're told. The smells of home. Where are we? And as much as Paul has been assailed by these odors, we're told that he saw that Farok was enjoying the stink of this air, and that there's no irony in his tone at all. He heard his mother cough, and her voice came back to him through the press of the troop. So Jessica's words rang out, how rich the odors of your Sietch, Stilgar. I see you do much working with the spice. You make paper, plastics, and isn't that chemical explosives? And we could hear another man's voice going, you know this from what you smell? So, of course, Jessica's nose being quite impressive here, I suppose, is also demonstrating her skills to Stilgar. But this is for Paul's benefit, and it's done without subtlety, nice and loud for everybody to hear. And Paul realized that Jessica is speaking for his benefit. thank goodness. And she wanted him to make a quick acceptance of this assault on his nostrils, is a good way of putting it. So, goodness gracious, yeah, doesn't sound pleasant, does it? Now, we're told that there's a buzz of activity at the head of the troop, and a prolonged indrawn breath seemed to pass through the Fremen, and Paul heard hushed voices down the line. We hear, "It's true then, Liet is dead." Paul's thoughts here go, Liet then, Chani, daughter of Liet, and the pieces fell together in his mind. We're told that Liet was the Fremen name of the planetologist. And he speaks to Farrak and asks him, "Is this the Liet known as Kynes?" And Farrak's response, of course, is a bit enigmatic, but there is only one Liet. And Paul stared at the back of a Fremen in front of him, and Liet Kynes is dead. And it's and someone has to, I suppose we're told, it was Harkonnen treachery that made it seem an accident. Lost in the desert, Thopter crash. I've just put in this a wee sort of tombstone with Liet Kynes. Liet is also Dr. Liet Kynes. And I suppose the point is that this is one of our mysteries of Dune. And it seems a bit appalling in some ways, but it is one of the mysteries of Dune that's kind of blatantly obvious, but is actually solved at this point by Paul based on the events here. So the mystery solved is, who is this mysterious Liet? And is Liet and Dr. Liet Kynes one and the same person? And the answer is yes, yes, they are. There we go. Oh dear. I think that's quite funny. There are some of the mysteries that are solved and some of them that are not, I suppose, you know. Carlos says, listening to descriptions of the Bene Gesserit, it's obvious the esteem in which held his wife Beverly, upon whom they were based. Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of Beverly's hand in Dune, but particularly with the Bene Gesserit, and especially with the female characters. I think how they behave, you know. Definitely. Yeah, and I thought that was quite a good point that Cynthia had made as well, putting the two and two together. And you know, the epigraphs usually do have something to do with what's in that chapter or what's coming ahead, you know, and just the descriptions match. I think it's a very good lineup of what goes on in the Royal Creche, ultimately leading to, I suppose, the marriage of Count Casimir Fenring and Margot Fenring, and them appearing, you know, on Gidi Prime. It wasn't a connection I would have made. I think it was a really good one. The subtleties of the Bene Gesserit. Excuse me. And I suppose, Carlos, that was the question I asked last week, I think, was with the Count and his lady, the question is, who are they working for? And it really does seem, I thought, that they're working more for the Bene Gesserit than they are for the Emperor, that the Count's on board with the Bene Gesserit. Yeah, I don't know, he struck me as, just left me with more questions about him, I suppose. But yeah, they're interesting. They're very interesting characters, and I think that's kind of opened them up a bit to more, you know, the fact that they're more interesting. They're more mysterious now than ever. But yeah. Something. What was I going to say? Well, something about the film, actually, in the Bene Gesserit, the way they're represented in the film, but I can't remember what it was. I must have a think, Carlos, and see if I can jog my memory. So at this point, we're told that Paul felt a burst of anger. A man who had befriended them, had helped save them from Harkonnen hunters, a man who had sent his cohorts searching for two strays in the desert, another victim of the Harkonnens. And of course, Farrak possibly picks up on this, but does Usul hunger yet for revenge? We're told before Paul could answer, And we get a bit of a scene change here, really, don't we? Let's have a wee look. Where's my numbers now? Number 16. So yeah, before Paul could answer it, there came a low call, and the troop swept forward into a wider chamber, carrying Paul with them. He found himself in an open space and is confronted by Stilgar, and we're told a strange woman who's wearing a flowing wraparound garment of brilliant orange and green. There we go, Irish colours there. This is, of course, Harah, the widow of Jamis. We get a bit of a description of her here. Her arms are bare to the shoulders. She wore no stillsuit. Her skin was pale olive, with dark hair that swept back from her high forehead. There's an emphasis on her sharp cheekbones and aquiline nose between the dense darkness of her eyes. There we go. I have here that Harah is the Hebrew word for to conceive or to be pregnant, which is interesting. And Harah is quite an interesting character here. Again, one of our, I suppose, minor characters. And I suppose we're going to see a bit of Sietch life. She's going to be our guide through this chapter, to see a bit of Sietch life, and also to get a bit of sense of, I suppose, the customs that the Fremen have, especially in relation to family and property, I suppose, family and marriage, maybe. So yeah, here we go with Harah, and this is good fun. I think Harah's an interesting character. She's not treated particularly well here, I think. This bested my Jamis, she demanded. Be silent, says Stilgar. Be silent, Harah. Like, shut up. So straight off, not particularly nice. It was Jamis's doing. He invoked the Tahani al-Burhan. He's not but a boy, she says. She gave her head a sharp shake from side to side, setting the water tallies to jingling. And I've put a wee question mark here, sort of why. Is this an overt, if you see what I mean, demonstration of wealth, if you like, something like a dowry to the situation, to whoever has bested Jamis? My children made fatherless by another child, she says. Surely 'twas an accident. Yeah, that's kind of interesting comment there, I think. This bested my Jamis, she demanded. He's not, if you want to just break that down again, listen to it again. He's not but a boy. My children made fatherless by another child. Surely it was an accident. And of course, Stilgar is going to ask Paul how old he is here. How many years have you? 15 standard, is Paul's reply. So I just put there that I think that's one of, again, there's a point of, often good to point out that Dune's an anti-war book, and I think that's just a little good example of that. I think, my children have been made fatherless by another child. Surely it was some accident. There must be an anti-war comment there by Frank, I think. And it sounds quite appalling when you say it out loud like that, doesn't it? But yes, indeed, 15 years. So Stilgar's eyes swept over the troop, and I suppose this is for everyone's benefit. Is there one among you dare? Sorry, hang on. Oh, have I written this down to cares? Is it? Have I written this down wrong? Is there one among you cares to challenge me? Sorry, I wrote it down correctly. And we're told there's silence. And Stilgar looked at the woman. I suppose back to business here. Until I've learned his weirding ways, I'd not challenge him. And Harah's but, and again, Stilgar interrupts her. You saw the stranger woman who went with Chani to the Reverend Mother. Let me see. Stilgar asked. She's an out friend, Sayadina, mother to this lad. The mother and son are masters of the weirding ways of battle. And we've got that word frame there, which we had used in the previous chapter. For want of a better word, an out friend, if you like. Excuse me, my mouth's like a desert tonight. It's appalling. I'm tripping all over my words as well. So I'll have to try and get a little bit better at it. But absolutely, my mouth is so dry. That's not an excuse to drink more beer. Dear, oh dear. Right, let's see. Now, let's see, where are we? So, yes, indeed. She's an out friend, Sayadina, mother to this lad. The mother and son are masters of the weirding ways of battle. And Harah says, Lisan al-Gaib. We're told that her eyes held awe as she turned them back towards Paul. And Paul's thoughts are, of course, here, the legend again. So perhaps, says Stilgar, it hasn't been tested though. And he returns his attention to Paul. So he says, Usul, it's our way that you've now the responsibility for Jamas's woman, here and for his two sons. His yali, his quarters are yours, his coffee service is yours, and this, his woman. And we'll stop there just before we go any further, I suppose. Yali is a Turkish word and a Greek word, yali and yali, which means seashore or beach, but is a term used for a house that's built on the waterside. But in this case, of course, we're told yali is your quarters, if you like. The rest of it, the way Harah is described here. So his place is yours, his coffee service is yours, and this, his woman. So the pronoun there, I suppose, this, you can take it as either a pronoun or a determiner, but it essentially presents Harah as property. Yeah, pretty much. This is woman as property, and it's not a very nice way to present anybody, is it? And I suppose Paul's behavior here is maybe, I'm not too sure about it, to be honest with you. He studies the woman and wonders, why isn't she mourning her man? Why does she show no hate for me? Two questions. And abruptly, we're told he saw the Fremen staring at him and that they're waiting. And someone whispered, giving him a prompt, there's work to do. Say how you accept her. And Stilgar, again, I suppose, prompting him, do you accept Harah as woman or servant? I suppose in that sense, as woman or servant, that means wife or servant, I think. Harah, excuse me, we're told lifts her arms and is turning slowly on one heel and says, I am still young, Usul. It said I will look as young as when I was with Jeff before Jamas bested him. My son would like that one. He's well invested in the name Jeff. That's what made me laugh there. We're told, so yeah, we figure out that Jamas has killed, as Paul's thinking here shows, that Jamas has killed someone else to win Harah, and it's basically this guy Jeff. Pardon me. And I found the name a bit I don't know, a bit jarring. Just Jeff, the friend. I don't know what anybody thinks. Seems a bit out of place there. Carlos says there seems to be a real sense of unity and community among the Fremen, probably the main advantage they had over the Sardaukar. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is communal life, I suppose, what we're seeing here. We're going to get a good sense of it, actually. I suppose, yeah, if you you'd have to put up with the smell, wouldn't you? Paul says, if I accept her as servant, may I change my mind at a later time? This is all a bit bizarre, I suppose. Possibly not in this world. Stilgar tells us that you'd have a year to change your decision. After that, she's a free woman to choose as she wishes. Or you could free her to choose for herself at any time, but she's your responsibility no matter what for 1 year, and you'll always share some responsibility for the sons of Jamas. So Paul says, I accept her as servant. And Harah doesn't seem too happy about this. She stamps her foot, shook her shoulders with anger. And says, but I'm young. And Stilgar stares at Paul. Caution's a worthy trait in a man who'd lead. And again, Harah saying, but I'm young. Again, she's told to shut up here. Be silent, says Stilgar. If a thing has merit, it'll be. Show Usul to his quarters and see he has fresh clothing and a place to rest. And Harah gives a ooh. So how many times is that she's told to shut up? Is it once? Twice? Yeah, she's basically shut up 3 times there. Twice by being told to be silent, the other time by being interrupted. So poor old Harah. And she's not too happy here. She's been basically made Paul's servant for a year. And I suppose the father of one of her children has been killed by this person. So I suppose we are going to see how that sense of communal life works here. I've just made a wee note, folks, that basically Paul kills Janus, gets his wife, takes his coffee service, takes his dojo, and raises his children. And it's not necessarily a good thing. But I suppose what we have here is that more of the consequences of killing Janus that are impacting upon Paul. So we're told at this point that Paul has registered enough of Harah to make a first approximation. He felt the impatience of the troop and knew that many things were being delayed here. He wondered, should he ask where Chani and Jessica are? But Stilgar's look says that this would be a mistake. So no, he shouldn't. So this bit I think is interesting. We're told that Paul pitched his voice. He faced Harah, pitched his voice with tone and tremolo to accent her fear and awe, said, show me my quarters, Harah. We will discuss your youth another time. And the response here is that Harah backs up 2 steps and casts a frightened glance at Stilgar. And of course, she says he has the wearing voice. So Paul has decided to use a bit of his voice here. He's pitched his tone and tremolo to accent her fear and awe, to make her more afraid and have more awe for him than she already has. He's basically I'm not too sure that's the behavior of a nice guy, to be honest with you. And it almost seems like that the last sentence is for like Stilgar's benefit. It's a bit of male humor. We'll discuss your youth another time. Ha ha ha. As if it's some kind of, quip. But I've just put down question mark. Is it the wrong tone? I suppose that it makes her more afraid, but actually I think that's what he wants here. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think how Paul treats Harah here is interesting. And I think it's almost worthy of comparison to how Leto treats Sharad Mapes. So show me my quarters, Harah. We will discuss your youth another time. She backed away 2 steps, cast a frightened glance at Stilgar. He has the wearing voice she has. Stilgar, Paul said, Chani's father put heavy obligation on me. If there's anything... And of course, Stilgar says, it'll be decided in council. Stilgar says, you can speak then. He nodded in dismissal, turned away with the rest of the troop following him. So they all sort of head off. So it's funny that I suppose if we just backtrack a little bit to that, where he uses the voice sort of on her, he has the wearing voice, Stilgar, she has. Paul says Stilgar. So Paul changes the subject here. Goes to Chani's father, heavy obligation on me if there's anything. And then, of course, Stilgar cuts him off. It'll be decided in council. You can speak there. And he nodded in dismissal and turned away with the troop following. So it kind of does show, I suppose, that there is a bit of a pecking order within Fremen life here, and we have various people being cut off. But yeah, it all seems a bit much for poor Harah, to be honest with you. And then to have this guy turn up, yeah, well, I suppose. Hmm. Excuse me, especially when one of the options is to set her free, basically. You could free her to choose for herself at any time. So he hangs on to her as a servant, and it's possibly that, simply put, I think Paul is an opportunity for Paul to learn from Harah. That she's going to be an educator for him. So Paul took Harah's arm, notes how cool her flesh seemed, feeling her tremble. So he scared her a bit. I'll not harm you, Harah. Show me our quarters. And he smoothed his voice with relaxance. So it's maybe a wee bit to just make her a little bit scared, so that I can come in and be a good friend to you now, and so they can seem sort of nicer, I suppose. But he did scare her a bit there, I thought. Of course, here's Harah's fears, actually. You'll not cast me out when the year's gone. I know for true I'm not as young as I once was. Sort of contradicting herself earlier. Paul says then, as long as you live, you'll have a place with me. And he released her arm. Come now, where are our quarters? So it ends up with him being, I suppose, there you go, there's that Atreides loyalty and how to go about getting it. So Harah leads the way. And we're told to turn down a passage, turn right into a wide cross tunnel, lighted by evenly spaced yellow overhead globes. And there's a stone floor that's smooth and swept clean of sand. Paul moves up beside her and studies her aquiline profile as she walked. So I suppose here's the questions that were in his mind earlier. You do not hate me, Harah. And Harah says, well, why should I hate you? That's a good question. I mean, why do you not hate me is a good question. Why should I hate you? I think it's kind of obvious. She nodded to a cluster of children and stared at them from a raised ledge of a side passage. They glimpsed adult shapes behind the children, let me see, partly hidden by film hangings. And Paul says, I bested Jamis. Which is basically, I killed Jamis. So Harah's response to this is, Stilgar said that the ceremony was held and you're a friend of Jamis. And she glanced sidelong at him. Stilgar said you gave moisture to the dead. Is that truth? And Paul says yes. Well, it's more than I'll do, can do. Which is an interesting response. Paul says, don't you mourn him? And Harah tells us that in the time of mourning, I'll mourn him. And I've just put here, what does that mean? I suppose we'll get a little bit, if we speculate upon life for Harah and Jamis and what it was like. She'll tell us in a wee bit here, actually. We'll find out a little bit about it. So we're told that they passed an opening. And we have men and women working together, and they're working on stand-mounted machinery in a large, bright chamber, and there seemed an extra tempo of urgency about them and their work. So Paul asks, what are they doing in there? And Harah, as they pass beyond the arch, says they hurry to finish the quota in the plastic shop before we flee. I should put a wee ring around that. The plastic shop. We need many dew collectors for the planting. And Paul says, flee. Harah responds, well, until the butchers stop hunting us or are driven from our land. And then we have, here we go, a very interesting little bit here. Let me get some fluids, folks. I think I'll just read this from the book. Here we go. Paul caught himself in a stumble, sensing an arrested instant of time, remembering a fragment, a visual projection of prescience, but it was displaced, like a montage in motion. The bits of his prescient memory were not quite as he remembered them. So he catches himself in a stumble. It's a visual projection of prescience, but it's displaced like a montage in motion. So he's having he's visually projecting something. You can see this something to do with it's almost like a montage in motion rather than, I suppose, something that he can go, that's an event that pick out in it, like an individual frame or something like that, I suppose. Pardon me. Bits of his prescient memory, not quite as he remembered them. So I suppose back to reality with Paul. The Sardaukar hunt, as he said. Harah says they'll not find much excepting an empty sietch or two, and they'll find their share of death in the sand. Paul says asks her they'll find this place. And Harah, quite realistically, I suppose, responds likely. So Paul says then, yet we take the time to make dew collectors. And Harah's response is that the planting goes on. So again, Paul's going to ask, I suppose, and this is for his benefit and for ours, what are dew collectors? I'm going to get quite a detailed description. I'm just wondering, are they in the term, we've got dew gatherers, dew collectors or dew precipitators. In the terminology of the Imperium, it says not to be confused with dew gatherers, which is the next entry, which are collectors or precipitators or egg-shaped devices about 4 centimeters on the long axis. They are made of chromoplastic that turns a reflecting white when subjected to light and reverts to transparency and darkness. The collector forms a markedly cold surface upon which dawn dew will precipitate. They are used by Fremen to line concave planting depressions where they provide a small but reliable source of water. There we go. Dew gatherers, it says, are workers who reap dew from the plants of Arrakis using a scythe-like dew reaper. So not to be confusing the two. But we're going to get a wee lesson on these here. From Harah. And I suppose it's going to highlight Paul's ignorance, isn't it? Let's see. Chris saying, perhaps mourning is only allowable when it's relatively safe and there are no more pressing demands. Carla saying, something similar is used in Peru to collect fog. Oh, cool. Yeah, the mourning, I think, as I said, all the rituals, I suppose, have been obeyed, all the forms have been obeyed, if you like, and whenever somebody's body has been, all I suppose all the things that placate the individual's shade, isn't it? Then that person's body goes back, the water goes to the tribe, etc. And I think it's the pragmatism of the life, and also, I suppose, as much as we look at it in one way, it's also to do with I suppose, as much as Harah is involved in this, there's also Jamis and Jeff's children, and we're going to find out a little bit about that. That of course that Jamis, as we get there, I suppose, having bested Jeff once upon a time, has raised Jeff's son in an equal fashion to his own son with Harah, I suppose. So it's a different culture and there's different reasons for it, isn't there? Let's see. So we're heading the dew collectors, aren't we? Bear with me a second. So yes, the plastic shop, which is right. Paul's little. I have to go over the page here. Sorry, bear with me. Did I catch up with where I was at? What are here we go. The planting goes on. What are dew collectors? Asks Paul. And Harah glanced at him, full of surprise. Don't they teach you anything in that wherever it is you come from? And I think Paul's response is quite funny. Not about Jew collectors. And she responds, "Hi." Where are we? This is quite a good wee bit here, I think. She said, "Hi," she said, and there was a whole conversation in the one word. I think that's very good. All sorts of, there's like humor in it, there's contempt, surprise, all sorts of things. And we've had that word in the last chapter as well. And of course, Paul goes, well, what are they? So here we go. Here's what I call Harah's lesson. Pardon me. Right. Okay, that's better. Each bush, each weed you see out there in the erg, how do you suppose it lives when we leave it? Each is planted most tenderly in its own little pit. The pits are filled with smooth ovals of chromoplastic. Lights turn them white. You can see them glistening in the dawn if you look down from a high place. White reflects. But when old father's sun departs, the chromoplastic reverts to transparency in the dark. It cools with extreme rapidity. The surface condenses moisture out of the air, and that moisture trickles down to keep our plants alive. Dew collectors, muttered Paul, enchanted by the simple beauty of the scheme. So essentially, there you go. They're plastics that change color, if you like, taking advantage of the heat during the day and the darkness at night, and that basically act as dew traps, collecting moisture that will feed the plants, basically. The interesting little bit within that, as Harah tells it to us, is that she mentions, I suppose, one of the Fremen deities, if you like. Let's just see if there's a little mention of him in the terminology of the Imperium. It's Old Father's son. No, he's not in there at all. But when Old Father's son departs, when the sun goes down, the chromoplastic reverts to transparency in the dark. It cools with extreme rapidity. The surface condenses moisture out of the air, and that moisture trickles down to keep our plants alive. So I suppose it's based on what Harah says there. I suppose that it's one of the ways that they grow plants, make sure that they have enough moisture. But it also seems to be a giveaway as well, that if you can see them glistening in the dawn, if you look down from a high place, that's a bit of a giveaway that somebody's there, I suppose. And I suppose there's also, with what she says earlier, a bit of fatalism that they will be found. So that the idea that they're happy enough to pack up and move on to somewhere else is interesting. When Paul's asking her, you think they'll find this place? Her response is pragmatic. It's likely, most likely, So the plastics are essential for, I suppose, agriculture, for growing food, growing plants. So yeah, dew collectors. Dew collectors, Paul muttered, enchanted by the simple beauty of the scheme. Yeah. So Harah changes the subject here and says, I'll mourn Jamis in the proper time for it. Indicating, I suppose, that her brain's still on this problem, isn't it? How does it, Frank puts it? Her mind had not left the question. That was it. He was a good man, Jamis, but quick to anger. A good provider, Jamis, and a wonder with the children. He made no separation between Jeff's boy, my firstborn, and his own true son. They were equal in his eyes. She turned a questing stare on Paul. Would it be that way with you, Usul? Paul replies, we don't have that problem. In other words, he doesn't have a son of his own to treat any differently than Jamis' son and Jeff's son. And Harah responding, and says, but if, and she's cut off again by Paul here. And it just shouts her name, Harah! With an exclamation mark. Excuse me. And we're told that she recoiled at the harsh edge in his voice. Excuse me, there's my throat going, folks. Bear with me. Oh, I've been really just worried about it. It's been, my throat's been so dry all this evening. Excuse me. And I've just been trying to watch my voice a wee bit. And it's one of those, doesn't matter how much, water, lemonade, or coffee you drink, it's just, it goes all, in fact, you're going to have to give me a wee second, folks, because I'm running out of fluids here. And I absolutely am in dire need of them. So bear with me a wee second. I'm going to get another drink here. I'll catch up with your comments and then we'll get on with it in a wee second. Won't me tick. Oh, there we go. That's better, folks. Sorry about that. Throat's been just on the brink all night. And I've just been trying to take it real easy with it, but it just went kaput there. So time for more fluids. Goodness gracious, always trying to maintain a balance here. Oh, I'll wait for that to settle a wee second. I'll catch up with your comments if we've got any. Let's see. Something similar is used in Peru to clean. As Joseph Smith saying late but not forgotten. Hi, Joseph. Thanks for joining us. Just checking my microphone's on. But yeah, excuse me, Joseph. I was just running off there. Pardon me. My throat had gone on me again. So it's just an excuse to pour a beer, I suppose. There we go. Though we don't want to be drinking too many of these. There we are. So yes, hurrah, Paul shouts. And she recoils at the harsh edge in his voice. Yeah, she's, I suppose, telling Paul a bit about herself and her family situation, and she's obviously got worries and fears about it, and she's sort of asking, but he just cuts her off here. I've coloured it all in red, actually. It's quite a shout. She recoils at the harsh edge in his voice. I think he's not being particularly nice to her here, I think. Yeah. And I think Harah takes it quite well, to be honest with you. He is not being nice to her at all, I think. I don't know what your opinions are, guys, if you think he's being fine, his behaviour's okay. I don't think it is. And I get the situation, but I feel quite badly for Harah in this chapter, and I think that she's still her own She's standing up, I suppose. She's not recoiling utterly, if you see what I mean. She's not cowering. Um, but, well, she's recoiling, I suppose. But she gets on with it in a second here, if you see what I mean. They passed another brightly lit room visible through an arch on their left. Paul, again, quite pragmatic. What's made there? Tell me what I want to know. And it's that kind of thing, being short with people, if you like. Way back whenever Leto encounters Mapes, I think, heading out, isn't it, from Jessica? He's very short with her in a very similar way that Paul treats Harah here. I'm not sure am I pronouncing that right. Harah or Harah, maybe. Harah. So, but so what's made there? So we get a little bit more. We've about the Fremen, I suppose the organization of the Sietch, really, I suppose, and that's what we're talking about. That we've had the plastic shop, first of all, where they're making Jew collectors. Here we have that. This is where they repair the. Harah tells us that this is where they repair the weaving machinery, but it must be dismantled by tonight. She gestured at a tunnel branching off to their left. So she's going a bit tour guide here, I suppose. Now through there and beyond, that's food processing and still suit maintenance. She looked at Paul. Your still suit looks new, but if it needs work, I'm good with suits. I work in the factory in season. So they come upon several knots of people now. There's a thicker clustering of openings in the tunnel's sides. There's a file of men and women past them, carrying packs that gurgled heavily, with the smell of spice strong about them. Spice. They'll not get our water or our spice. You can be sure of that, says Harah. So the things that are important, I suppose, to the Fremen are water and our spice. They're not be getting either. Paul glanced at the openings in the tunnel walls, seeing the heavy carpets on the raised ledges, glimpses of rooms with bright fabrics on the walls, piled cushions. People in the openings fell silent at their approach, followed Paul with untamed stares. So they're getting gawked at a bit here. And the people find it strange, Harah tells him, that you bested Jamis. Likely you'll have some proving to do when we're settled in a new siege. And Paul replies, I don't like killing. And Harah says, thus Stilgar tells it, though we're told her voice betrayed disbelief. So the fact that Paul has killed Jamis at such a young age is going to be, some people don't believe this already, and it'll be I suppose a point of contention. Some people aren't just going to believe it, and it's probably going to result in him being to have to do some proving, as Harah puts it, which is a euphemism, I suppose, for one-on-one combat, I suppose, possibly fatal combat. So we're told there's a shrill chanting. A shrill chanting, I can nearly say that, grew louder ahead of them, and they came to another side opening wider than any of the others. Wider than any of the others Paul had seen. He slowed his pace, staring in at a room crowded with children sitting cross-legged on a maroon carpeted floor. Here we get to see a little bit of, I quite like this bit, a bit of Fremen education. So, excuse me, we get to see a bit of Fremen education here, and I suppose a Fremen teacher at work. In fact, let's just read this. At a chalkboard against the far wall stood a woman in a yellow wraparound, a projecto stylus in one hand. The board was filled with designs, circles, wedges and curves, snake tracks and squares, flowing arcs split by parallel lines. The woman pointed to the designs one after the other as fast as she could move the stylus, and the children chanted in rhythm with her moving hand. Paul listened, hearing the voices grow dimmer behind as he moved deeper into the siege with Harah. And we'll get some of those words here that the kids are learning. I did a wee bit of a doodle of the different, I don't know if you can see that there up at the top, a wee bit of a doodle of the different symbols they were describing. That's what I came up with, just for a bit of fun. So Paul listened as they head off. The voices growing dimmer behind them as they move deeper into the siege. We get a little bit of this Fremen language, the words that they're learning. Tree. So we'll just run through them here. Words essential to Fremen vocabulary. Tree, grass, dune, wind. Yeah, I'm reading. Mountain, hill, fire, lightning, rock, rocks, dust, sand, heat, shelter, heat, full, winter, cold, empty, erosion, summer, cavern, day, tension, moon, night, caprock, sand tide, slope, planting, binder. Again, it's an interesting basic set of vocabulary, if you like, isn't it? It includes all the words that we might expect for sort of, I suppose, of geographical importance. But the word erosion, for example, is a basic word in these kids' vocabulary. I think that's very interesting. It's an ecologically loaded language, isn't it? Oh, that's better. Throat's better now. So again, Paul says, you conduct classes at a time like this. And Harah, her face somber, grief which hold edged her voice. What Liet taught us, we cannot pause. Sorry, I'll read that again. What Liet taught us, we cannot pause an instant in that. Liet, who is dead, must not be forgotten. It's the Chakopsa way. What Liet taught us, we cannot pause an instant in that. Liet, who is dead, must not be forgotten. It is the Chakopsa way. So these are the lessons, I suppose, part of the education that Liet Kynes has brought to the Fremen. And I suppose everything about them is integrated into the ecology of Arrakis, including their language. And this is the Chakopsa way. I suppose that we're going to get a wee sort of comment about Paul, from Paul, I suppose, in a wee minute that'll be important to this. So they crossed the tunnel to the left, stepped up onto a ledge, and we're told, your Yali is ready for you, Usul. There we are. Hang on. 48. So Paul hesitates before joining her. Up on the ledge, he's showing that Atreides' caution again. And we're told that he felt a sudden reluctance to be alone with this woman. And it came to him that he was surrounded by a way of life that could only be understood by postulating an ecology of ideas and values. He felt that this Fremen world was fishing for him, trying to snare him in its ways. And I've just put next to that, such as the Chakopsa way. He knew what lay in that snare, the wild jihad, the religious war he felt he should avoid at any cost. And I've just put next to that, that's, the first step in avoiding a trap, if you like, is being aware of its existence. And we have that motif with the Atreides before we leave Arrakis, I suppose. But here, it's pretty much the same thing. The way he's describing it here, this Fremen world, Arrakis, feels that the planet is fishing for him. And of course, we get this fishing, I suppose, metaphor, trying to snare him in its ways. And that's it, trying to snare, the trap him in its ways. This is a trap, the Chakopsa way, if you like. Everything about the Fremen is a trap. He knew what lay in that snare. It's the wild jihad, the religious war he felt that he should avoid at any cost. Uh, should isn't must. I thought that's an interesting one. So yeah, and just there we go. He senses that this is a part of the trap, if you like. It's the intoxication of the other, isn't it? With Paul Atreides, it's the Fremen life itself that is the trap for him. That he'll love it and become totally absorbed in it and do his best to become Fremen. Hmm. So Harah says, "This is your Yali. Why do you hesitate?" Pardon me. So Paul nodded and joined her on the ledge. He lifted the hangings across from her and, feeling the metal fibres in the fabric, he followed her into a short entranceway and then into a larger room. We're told it's square and is of side 6 meters. There are thick blue carpets on the floor, blue and green fabrics hiding the rock walls, glow globes tuned to yellow overhead that are bobbing against the draped yellow ceiling fabrics. The effect, we're told, is that of an ancient tent. Which sounds pretty cool. Pardon me. Let's see. So we have Harah, left hand on hip, eyes studying his face. The children are with a friend. They will present themselves later. And Paul masked his unease beneath a quick scan of the room. The thin hangings to the right partly concealed a larger room, the cushions piled around the walls. He felt the soft breeze from an air duct and saw that the outlet cunningly hidden in a pattern of hangings directly ahead of them. Do you wish me to help you remove your still suit? No, thank you, says Paul. Shall I bring food? Yes, says Paul. So you get the sense that Paul's feeling kind of, I suppose, around Harah here, etc., what you would call sexually awkward, if you see what I mean. Pardon me. Food? Yeah, food's great. Food's great. Yes, please. Yeah. Harah tells us, of course, that there's a reclamation chamber off the other room, suggested for your comfort and convenience when you're out of your still suit. So basically, I put this is the Fremen loo, a crapper, WC, if you like, for your comfort and convenience. Paul said, "You said you have to leave the Sietch. Shouldn't we be packing or something?" Again, doesn't seem to be a real sense of urgency, but there is, if you like. It'll be done in its time, says Harah. The butchers have yet to penetrate to our region. Still, she hesitated, staring at him. Paul's anger here again. What is it? He demanded. Angry. You've not the eyes of Ibad. It's strange, but not entirely unattractive. Get the food. I'm hungry, is his response. I just put a wee laughing out loud, I suppose. She's mocking him a little bit here. And I suppose she's got the sense of him in a wee bit, if you like. Harah smiled at him with a knowing woman's smile that he found disquieting. So she's got his measure here. I'm your servant. Basically, that's not your wife, is what she's saying here. And she whirled away in one light motion, ducking behind heavy wall hangings that revealed another narrow passage before falling back in place. And we're told that Paul's thoughts are that he's angry with himself. And he's uneasy. He's a bit rude, I think, and he's definitely angry. But I thought, apparently we're told it's directed at himself. He's not happy. And I wonder why. It doesn't, if we just look at it here, feeling angry with himself, he brushed through the thin hanging on the right and into the larger room. He stood there a moment, caught by uncertainty. So is that what's making him angry? And he wondered where Chani was. Chani, who'd just lost her father. We're alike in that, he thought. So his thoughts really are with Chani, and it's almost, I suppose, having seen her in all of these dreams, etc., and this kind of thing. He's suddenly here. Here's this woman, and here's her quarters of Jamison. Here are her, soon to be here are her children, and I suppose he's feeling a bit dislocated, suddenly with these responsibilities. And he's been separated from his mother. Yeah, so he's just, I suppose he's trying to learn as much as he can here, I think. At the same time, I don't think he's dealing with it in a particularly graceful manner. So he's wondering where Chani was. Chani, who'd just lost her father, were alike in that, he thought. So the similarity is that they have. I suppose that's the thing where whenever we have the casting of Liet Kynes in the movie and gender swapping it, this is another area where it creates a problem, because I suppose it's one of the things that make Paul and Chani bond, I suppose, is the loss of their fathers, their mutual fathers in the Harah Keen affair. Pardon me. So we're told the faint smell of the burning creosote bush came to his nostrils, riding the omnipresent stink of the sietch. And he saw that he'd already suppressed odorous assault on his senses. Oh, here I've made a wee note here. I've written these in the wrong order. Bear with me. I did this in my notebook, folks. And I've written at the top, read 56 first, then 57. I've just read the wrong one first, haven't I? I jumped ahead. I'll back up a wee second. Sorry. I'm going to sounds first. It's a wailing cry sounded from the outer corridors, its volume muffled by intervening hangings, and we're told it was repeated a bit more distant and again. And we're told that Paul realized that someone was calling the time and focused on the fact that he had seen no clocks. So this is, I suppose, a bit like a town crier, isn't it? In terms of how the Fremen deal with time, somebody goes round and lets everybody know what time it is, basically by shouting out. Pardon me. Muffled by intervening hanging, repeated a bit more distant and again. So at the very beginning of this chapter, we've had the Fremen calendar. We've been told that it's around autumn, and it's in the middle of, isn't it, the month of Caprock. And now we're getting an indication of time and how the Fremen use time. And I suppose water clocks would be the thing I would expect them to have, if you like. There's a place not too far from here, up around the northeast coast of Northern Ireland, and it's, let me see, I suppose it's at the end of what you would call, I'm trying to think, is it either the beginning or the end of what you would call the Glens of Antrim? I'm trying to, for the life of it, is it Cushendun? No, it's not Cushendun. For the life of it, they've got all these different clocks, like sundials and all these public gardens. The name will come to me. It's up near Ballygally. I think that might be it. It's just next to Ballygally. There's a castle there, Ballygally Castle Hotel. Goodness, what do you call the place? If you find it, if you're ever looking for it, just suppose you go out and it's about a mile up the road. It's like a forest park, and they have all these really nice sort of old-fashioned ancient clocks and stuff. Yeah, but sundials and that kind of thing. That's what got me thinking there. But one thing I thought, as much as Paul hasn't seen any clocks, I thought water clocks would be, especially with the Fremen's, renown with precision, if you see what I mean, and accuracy. So human clocks telling the time. And then we get the faint smell of burning creosote bush had came to his nostrils, riding the omnipresent stink of the sietch. And he saw that he'd already suppressed the odorous assault on his senses. So we get the sounds and the smells. I can relate to that. Once upon a time, I used to, I lived in London for about 5 years. And I used to sort of fly back and forth between London and I suppose where I lived at the time in Northern Ireland, in a place called Larne, and it was just outside a wee bit of the town in the country. And Used to fly into London, and the smell of the air was horrendous. And after about a minute, you don't notice anymore. And it always became, and it's the same with the drinking water there. And then whenever I came home, and I got off at the airport here and just come out into the Irish air and go, oh. But the best thing ever was when I got home and we used to have water off a spring up there, and it was just freezing cold, gorgeous, clean, pure water. The difference I used to hate the first minute of being back in London was awful, and then you don't notice. And I just kind of got that sense from this. Gulp. Oh goodness, we must be getting near the end. I've got gulp to be continued here. Hang on, let's have a wee look. So 57. Yes, at this point, then Paul again wonders about his mother, how the moving montage of the future would incorporate her and the daughter that she bore, Alia. Of course, this is all coming soon, isn't it? Mutable time awareness danced around him. He shook his head sharply, focusing his attention on the evidences that spoke of profound depth and breadth in this Fremen culture that had swallowed them. With its subtle oddities. I like that sentence just put there on its own. It's swallowed them. And it's a good sort of pause for impact, almost, if you like, with its subtle oddities. And then on we go. But indeed, they are subtle oddities. The smells that we've had so far, like burning creosote, obviously, human excrement and, I suppose, sweat, the smells of spice and the spice harmonics drifting through the place, these different odors, the sounds, and I suppose activity of Fremen life is here. We see manufacturing and repair. We see education. We have a calendar in place. We have a time system in place. We have a communal life and some kind of ecological sort of language, and even a system designed to deal with orphans and widows, if you like. Pardon me. And agriculture. And all of this, I suppose, at the same time presenting us with a culture who are, able to, who are itinerant. They're able to get up and go and move, just like that. Pack up their entire culture, move to somewhere of safety. So quite a bit in this chapter, actually, but not too long, I suppose. Paul's wondering about his mother, how the moving montage of the future would incorporate her and the daughter that she bore. The mutable time awareness danced around him. He shook his head. I've just read this. I'll read it again. He shook his head sharply, focusing his attention on the evidences that spoke of profound depth and breadth in this Fremen culture that had swallowed them. So it's here, and it's going to bring the jihad, isn't it? I think it's just how well that this culture is going. They're going to fit into it and be absorbed by it, and that the Fremen are fishing for him, I think, is the other point here. As much as the Atreides have always been looking for the people that they need, it's the Fremen that are looking for a messiah. They're looking for someone to fit this pattern, and I suppose it's going to, as much as things aren't going quite according to the missionary protective it, this Fremen world was fishing for him, trying to snare him in its ways. It's a two-way street, this power and control thing, I think. But here's the subtle oddities. If we go all the way back, I suppose, thinking about the poison snoopers, he had seen a thing about the caverns and this room, a thing that suggested for greater differences than anything he had yet encountered. So this is what's really alien to this form of life for Paul. is that there's no sign of a poison snooper here. No indication of their use anywhere in the cave warren. Um, Now, so he's grown up with these things that there's poison can be in your food, poison can be in your drink, even within your own household, and that the level of or the lack of trust within your own household, etc., is such that you don't eat or you don't drink until you've checked your food for poison. Um, this is a society that, as we're about to be told, has poisons, but does not have that problem within its own, I suppose, tribal nature. Whatever, if anybody's got a problem with somebody else here, they will be called out. If you see what I mean, they'll confront each other and deal with the problem in the open. There's no need for poisons. So, well, not within the society, I suppose, but they are cultivated, I suppose, as weaponry here. Um, but the thing about the caverns in this room, the thing that suggested for a greater difference is that anything he had yet encountered, no sign of a poison snooper here, no indication of their use anywhere in the cave warren. He could smell poisons in the Sietch stench, strong ones, common ones, but no poison snoopers. We get, and it's a very interesting point, I suppose. And of course, we've just come from a chapter, pardon me, where poison is a part of the combat of Phaedrith and the gladiator slave, the Atreides gladiator. And particularly within that chapter, we have an expectation of poison, that one of these weapons will be poisoned, and that there's a formal means to it, that because this person wears this glove, this weapon will have poison in it, and because they wear that glove, it won't. And of course, the poisons have been swapped, and I suppose rather obviously both weapons could easily be poisoned, but there's a cultural use of poison within the Empire, and it's kind of almost an expected thing, and sort of within we can call it the Imperium, the major houses, the minor houses, and the Feuerfolk system, but not amongst the Fremen. And that's a difference in their society. They have a level of trust that they absolutely need, I suppose, in order to survive. So we're told, just to end this chapter, I think this is quite a good ending, actually. He heard a rustle of hangings, thought it was Harah returning with food, and turned to watch her. Instead, from beneath a displaced pattern of hangings, he saw two young boys, perhaps aged 9 and 10, staring out at him with greedy eyes. Each wore a small kinjal-type crysknife, rested a hand on the hilt. And Paul recalled the stories of the Fremen, and their children fought as ferociously. That their children fought as ferociously as the adults. And I sort of put to be continued. And it is one of those things that we've. I think it's kind of a funny ending, and it's almost a little cliffhanger in itself. That it just ends with Paul turning to see what he expects is this woman, and in come these two children holding their hands on knives. And I suppose the next thing is that, this is the man that killed your father. If you see what I mean. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Goodness gracious. There we are. I'm at the end of that chapter, folks, and I'm thank you for bearing with me. I know I've not been as animated as normal. Excuse me, but I've just done an awful lot of talking this week, and my throat was absolutely shredded today, and I wanted to come on and get this done. But it was a nice short chapter, and we have only just one chapter left, really, in book 2 of Dune. And it's going to be a really, really important chapter. It's quite a lengthy one. It's a very important chapter, isn't it? Yeah, going to be fun looking at this. Mm-hmm. And then we go into book 3 of the Dune the Prophet. And I suppose then we're into the last run, really. Goodness gracious, so where are we at now? We're starting on page 374. Book 3 begins on page 393 on this one, and we're done by 529. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so it's, yes, indeed, the water of life, isn't it? It's going to be, there we go. Oh dear. Goodness gracious. It's nice to have a wee short chapter for a change. And I just thought, with the kids turning up at the end, I just thought, gulp, to be continued would be a good one there. But it's a little cliffhanger, isn't it? Before we hit, I suppose, a chapter of major importance, and that's going to take us through to the end of the second part of this book. And I'm really looking forward to the next chapter. I dare say there's going to be a lot of work to do on it. Pardon me. Yeah. Goodness gracious me. Oh dear. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me, folks. I suppose it's been a bit of a quiet one tonight. My throat, I've been just really taking it easy and trying not to get too animated with the book. Just to try and just read it at a nice normal pace. But I'm very grateful for it being a short chapter tonight. So there we go. So listen, folks, hopefully we'll see you next. I'm going to save the voice and head off here. And it's Friday night, just to stop a wee bit early. I've had a busy day. And hopefully we'll see you next time. Friday. And next week, it'll be, I suppose we're losing the GMT +1. And our time's just going to go to GMT. As we lose a bit of daylight here. So we'll be at 10 o'clock Fridays, hopefully GMT from now on, and not the +1. It's also confusing, isn't it? But there we go. We'll have to sort all our clocks out. I think they go back on Sunday. And then, of course, we have Halloween very shortly, don't we? So I'll head on, folks, in the meantime. And I suppose we'll not see you before then. So have a happy Halloween. And look after yourselves no matter where you are. And thank you very much for joining me. All the very best. Take care now. And good night. Bye-bye. Do.